Yeah, so guys, hi, this is Rohith. This is the first time a tech CEO is coming and speaking, and rather I am first speaking in a stage. Otherwise, it's very, very easy to be a CEO and build things, right? Uh, but yeah, it's a very good opportunity to also give you guys certain wisdom in terms of what we've been building and what we've been advocating with the government, right? Uh, Before I start, I want to understand one thing from you all. How many of you have experienced a digital fraud? Or say now the trending thing is called digital arrest, right? So how many of you have actually experienced, even 1% of it with you, your family, or probably your peer groups, right? So I think I can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, close to 10 people, right? So there is, you know, before I start, like, because of, this is something which I would like to speak extensively around the whole digital fraud, digital arrest and everything. Uh, Imagine our world where every click, every photo shared, every like that you do paints a very detailed portrait of you, right? And because of that, what you actually do, this is the reality what we, or rather our hyper-connected ages, right? It all gives you your desires, your fears, your, can, can I have the, thank you, sorry. Yeah. Every click, every like, every photo shared paints a detailed portrait of you, right? And we've been always living with a traditional mode of consent, a simple yes or no in a lengthy terms and conditions agreement, right? And that was something which we've never, or rather we've not been very comfortable with because we never read, right? Have you actually read the whole lengthy terms and conditions till now? No, I haven't read, right? So that is where it is not actually good. Why? Because it is failing, because as we progress to a more globalized world, this, what do you say, this hyper-connected age that we have, or rather we are in, the whole point of how do we actually fit in ourselves, or rather how the whole technology takes in our consent is very, very granular, or rather a very binary approach, right? Why? Because of algorithms. Algorithms are constantly learning about us, predicting our moves, predicting our behavior, influencing our choices, right? And that same algorithms operate beyond our explicit consent, shaping our experiences in a subtle and an invisible manner. Again, options, endless options. We are bombarded with a lot of options to do that, to do this, to do that. But true control eludes us. Why? Because we click I agree without understanding the implications, and because it's either too complex, too long, or too what do you call? Too complicated for us to understand. Hey, I do not mind seeing or reading that, right? The third point is the power imbalance. Tech giants often have a huge power to shape our experiences, whereas individuals often lack the knowledge to understand where their data is being utilized. But moving forward, we need a more nuanced understanding of the word consent. How do we create that? By creating meaningful consent, right? Now, meaningful consent, what I mean is, consent has to be clear, concise, and it has to be explained in a manner that is accessible to all and understood by all, right? Second, granular control. We should have the power to understand granular control in terms of opting out of certain types of data sharing preferences, or probably not sharing the right, or not sharing the right amount of data that we would not be comfortable with doing. Lastly, data literacy, right? Now, in India, we have close to 70% people who have who have a formal access to a social world. Like, what I mean by that is 70% of Indians have an account with Facebook, with LinkedIn, with Instagram and everything. But close to 17% have access, have data literacy awareness, right? So it is very imperative for us as individuals to understand on their privacy right, which has to be clear and accessible to all. Now, what is the responsibility that we are looking forward as an individual towards in the future, towards policymakers, towards businesses, and towards and us as individuals? Now, policymakers, there is a rule known as DPDP, which is called as Digital Personal Protection Act, which states that every customer's data that is now utilized by a particular a corporate has to have the mandatory consent of a customer, without which they cannot access. And if they do access it unauthorized, there is a fine of 250 CR fine starting. Right? So policymakers have made our lives a little bit more easier right now by creating acts, by creating rules such as this, so that we are more aware of our privacy rights. Second, to businesses. What they have to do is to adopt ethical and more clear ways to make sure that, hey, how you're collecting my data, and making sure that, hey, is my data, is the data of the customer that we take, is it right, is it ethical, and is it also in a way that, hey, if the particular customer has said no, do I still have to access that particular customer, right? And lastly, to individuals, we should have the particular awareness to understand, hey, what are my privacy rights, right? Because without knowing the word privacy, we cannot do anything, right? So that is one imperative statement that I would suggest and I would recommend to all of you to understand, because we've reached a long way, right? All the way from technology, from a black and white TV to a colored TV to a smartphone to now a social world. So we don't call ourselves as a digital world, we call ourselves as a social world, because humans are social beings, right? Now, before I end my particular slide, I would like to create, or rather ask all of you to understand what is the way forward in terms of how do we understand what are our basic rights in terms of making sure we do not face the same digital arrest, digital fraud that we do. Or even if we do, how do we save ourselves? That is where we have the word called Digital Personal Protection Act. It is an act that is recently launched. It has been mandated towards the citizens to understand that, hey, all citizens now has to enforce wherever they give their consent. It could be as simple as giving your Aadhaar card to a hotel for check-in, or even probably uploading your particular data to a DigiLocker or DigiYatra to have a very easy accessible future, right? So what I would like to conclude and state is that be more proactive in terms of public advocates, in terms of speaking around your rights in terms of privacy, and also make yourself up to date with certain acts such as these, to know what can a particular corporate or a particular company can do and cannot do, right? And even if the moment we understand that, hey, certain customers or certain companies have our data without our particular consent, what can we do to prevent further leakage of data, right? Because if you see the last 12 months, you have understood that India ranks globally. India ranks second in the global world in terms of data breach attacks, right? So I believe this should be an insight for all of us to understand, hey, what can we actually achieve with the moment, hey, with the word right to privacy that has finally come into India, and how do we further prevent ourselves or our loved ones from any more further digital fraud that is there. Thank you. Right.